For 3,000 years, humanity had been the galaxy's favorite pet. Quarantined on a single world, watched through invisible barriers, studied like animals in a cosmic zoo.
The Galactic Council had deemed them promising but primitive, too dangerous to join civilization, too interesting to exterminate. But on the day the barriers fell, when humanity's children took their first steps into the void, the galaxy learned a terrifying truth. The cage hadn't been built to keep humanity in.
It had been built to keep everyone else safe. What the Council had mistaken for patience was preparation. What they'd called primitive was potential, and what they thought was containment was actually the largest military buildup in galactic history, hidden in plain sight on a single blue world. The day humanity stopped waiting, the universe held its breath. Then it ran. The observation deck of the Galactic Council's flagship, Eternal Wisdom, offered the finest view in known space. Through its crystalline walls, Ambassador Zektari could see the blue marble that had fascinated the galaxy for millennia. Earth hung in the void like a jewel, surrounded by the shimmering barrier that had contained its inhabitants since before his grandfather's grandfather had been born. Still watching the humans, old friend? Zektari didn't turn as Council Director Vashti approached, her 6 arms moving in the complex patterns that indicated mild amusement among her people. The Cathari had always found the galaxy's obsession with Earth peculiar. Someone must, Zektari replied, his 4 eyes never leaving the planet below. The containment field shows stress fractures along the northern hemisphere. Engineering estimates it has perhaps 50 solar cycles before complete failure. 50 cycles to prepare the termination protocols then. Vashti joined him at the viewing wall. The council voted yesterday. Unanimous decision. When the barriers fail, we cannot risk letting them spread. Zektari's proboscis twitched with distress. In his 800 years of life, he had observed 17 species make the transition from planetary to galactic civilization. Most failed spectacularly, destroying themselves within a few generations of achieving faster-than-light travel. The survivors typically joined the council as junior members, grateful for guidance from their more experienced neighbors. Humans were different. Everything about them defied prediction. Look at them, Zektari said, gesturing toward the planet with one of his manipulator arms. 3,000 years of containment. And what did they do? Most species would have stagnated, turned inward, become philosophical and peaceful. But the humans on the planet's surface, the familiar lights of their cities pulsed like neurons in a vast brain. But there were new patterns now, geometric shapes that hadn't existed a century ago. Structures that served no obvious civilian purpose. The humans called them research facilities, though council sensors couldn't penetrate their shielding to confirm what kind of research was being conducted inside. They've been building something, Vashti observed. Our xenopsychologists believe it's compensatory behavior. Denied the ability to expand outward, they've turned their aggressive tendencies inward, against their own planet. They're probably destroying their ecosystem. Zektari wasn't so sure. He had been studying humans longer than any other council member, had read every report filed by the monitoring stations positioned around their system. The patterns he saw didn't suggest a species in decline. If anything, the humans seemed to be preparing for something. Director, one of the bridge technicians called out, her voice tight with confusion. We're receiving an unscheduled transmission from the human homeworld. Both ambassadors turned. In 3 millennia of observation, the humans had never attempted to communicate beyond their containment field. The barrier was specifically designed to prevent any signals from escaping. Impossible, Vashti said. The containment field blocks all electromagnetic and quantum communications. Yes, Director, but they're not using electromagnetic or quantum signals. Zektari felt his secondary hearts begin to race. Show us. The main display activated, revealing the image of a human female. She appeared to be middle-aged by their standards, with the pale skin and dark hair typical of their northern latitudes. What struck Zektari immediately was her expression. No fear. No desperation. She looked. Greetings, observers, the human said in perfect galactic standard. My name is Dr. P.L. Sarah Chen, and I represent the Unified Earth Government. We hope this message finds you well. Gasps echoed around the bridge. The human was speaking Galactic Standard, a language that had supposedly never been transmitted to Earth. More disturbing still, she seemed to know she was being observed.
We've been aware of your presence for quite some time, Dr.
Chen continued as if reading their thoughts. Approximately 700 of your years, to be precise. We want you to know that we harbor no ill will toward the Galactic Council. We understand your caution. In your position, we might have made the same decision. Vashti's arms were now moving in the rapid patterns that indicated extreme agitation. How are they transmitting? How do they know our language? How do they know about the Council? On the screen, Dr. Chen smiled. It was not a reassuring expression. However, the time for observation has ended. In approximately 6 standard hours, we will be deactivating the containment field from our end. We wanted to give you advance notice as a courtesy. The bridge erupted in chaos. Technicians frantically worked their consoles while officers shouted orders in a dozen different languages. Through it all, the human woman waited patiently, her hands folded in front of her. Impossible, Vashti declared. The field can only be controlled from our stations. They don't have the technology to. Actually, Dr.
Chen interrupted, somehow hearing the director's words despite the fact that audio transmission to Earth should have been impossible.
We've had the technology to disable your field for about 600 years. We've simply chosen not to use it until now.
Zektari's mind reeled. 600 years. That would place human technological capability far beyond anything the Council had estimated. It would mean they had been deliberately concealing their advancement, playing the role of primitive captives while secretly what, he wondered aloud. Dr. Chen's smile widened. While secretly preparing for this moment, Ambassador Zektari, we've been listening to your communications for centuries. We know every detail of your technology, your culture, your military capabilities. We know about the termination protocols. We know about the 18 other species you've confined and eventually destroyed when they became inconvenient. The bridge fell silent, but the termination protocols were classified at the highest levels, known only to the Council's inner circle. No one spoke of the 18 species. They were an unfortunate necessity, dangerous civilizations that had to be eliminated for the greater good of the galaxy. But if the humans knew... We're not here to threaten you, Dr. Chen continued. We simply want you to understand the situation clearly. When the barriers fall in 5 hours and 53 minutes, humanity will join the galactic community. We hope this transition can be peaceful. We prepared gifts for our new neighbors, tokens of goodwill and friendship. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Get me a connection to Council High Command, Vashti ordered, her voice barely controlled. Emergency Priority Alpha. And activate the termination fleet. All of it. As alarms began to sound throughout the ship, Zektari found himself staring at the blue world below with new eyes. For 3,000 years, the galaxy had watched humanity like scientists observing bacteria in a petri dish. Now, he wondered if it had been the other way around. Had they been the ones under observation? Had humanity been studying them, learning their weaknesses, preparing for this moment? The thought sent a chill through his exoskeleton. Within minutes, ships began appearing in the space around Earth. Not just Council vessels, but warships from every major species in the galaxy. The Cathari brought their planet killers. The Vorthak deployed their reality-warping dreadnoughts. The crystalline Shektar manifested their living weapons. Creatures of pure energy capable of sterilizing entire worlds. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. Enough firepower to crack planets and boil stars. Yet as the Armada took position, something nagged at Zektari. The humans had known about the termination protocols. They had known this fleet would come. So why had they announced their intentions? Why give the galaxy time to prepare? His answer came as the containment field began to fluctuate. Field integrity at 90% and falling. A technician reported 80%, 70%. On every ship in the Armada, weapon systems charged to full power, targeting computers locked onto the blue world below, ready to reduce it to cosmic dust the moment the barriers fell. 50%. Zektari realized he was holding his breath. Around him, the bridge crew leaned forward in anticipation. In a few moments, they would witness the end of humanity. It should have been a somber occasion, but there was an electric tension in the air, as if everyone sensed that something was about to go very wrong. 20%. 10%. Field collapse imminent. The shimmering barrier around Earth flickered like a dying candle, then vanished completely. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Earth hung naked in space, unprotected and vulnerable. The assembled fleet's weapons remained trained on the planet, waiting for the order to fire. Then space itself began to change. It started as a subtle distortion, like heat shimmer rising from hot pavement. Then the distortion spread, rippling outward from Earth in all directions. As it passed through the assembled fleet, something impossible happened. The ships began to dissolve, not destroyed, not exploded, simply unmade, as if someone was deleting them from reality one pixel at a time. The mighty Cathari planet killers flickered and faded. The Vorthak dreadnoughts crumpled inward on themselves. Even the energy beings of the Shektar simply winked out of existence. What's happening? Vashti screamed, her arms writhing in terror. Report. Report. Someone give me a report.
but her crew was too busy staring at their own hands, which had begun to turn translucent. Zakhtari felt a strange calm settle over him as he watched his own body begin to fade. Through the viewing wall, Earth remained solid and real, but everything else in the system was becoming insubstantial. The humans hadn't built weapons to fight the galaxy. They had built something far more terrifying. They had learned to edit reality itself. As the eternal wisdom dissolved around him, Zakhtari caught a final glimpse of Earth. New lights were appearing on its surface, geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. And rising from the planet's atmosphere, sleek ships unlike anything in the Council databases began to emerge. Not warships, exploration vessels. With his last conscious thought, Zakhtari finally understood. The humans hadn't been preparing for war. They had been preparing for expansion. The galaxy's greatest mistake hadn't been underestimating human aggression. It had been underestimating human patience. As reality unraveled around the assembled fleet, Dr. Sarah Chen sat in her office deep beneath the Swiss Alps, watching the dissolution of 3,000 years of galactic tyranny. Around her, technicians monitored readings from instruments that had no names in any galactic language. Probability cascade is holding steady, one of them reported. Reality anchors are maintaining local coherence. Excellent, Dr. Chen replied. And the fleet? 97% dissolved. The remaining 3% are in full retreat.
Doctor.
Chen nodded with satisfaction. The probability engine had worked exactly as designed. By carefully studying the quantum signatures of the containment field for 7 centuries, human scientists had learned to manipulate the fundamental forces that held reality together. They could make things exist or stop existing simply by adjusting the mathematical equations that governed local space-time. It was, she reflected, probably the most elegant solution to the galaxy's aggression problem.
No one had been killed, exactly.
The crews of those ships had simply been edited out of this particular version of reality, shunted off to alternate dimensions where Earth had never existed. They would live full lives, never knowing what they had lost. Dr. Chen, another technician, called out. We're receiving surrender requests from 17 different species. They're asking for terms. She smiled. Send them the standard package. Full cultural exchange, technology sharing, and mutual defense agreements. And send our survey teams to begin mapping the galaxy. After 3,000 years of captivity, I think it's time humanity had some room to stretch its legs. As the first human ships crossed the boundary of their solar system and headed for the stars, the galaxy held its breath. The age of Council dominance was over. The age of humanity had begun. And, in a control room buried deep beneath an unremarkable mountain on an unremarkable planet, Dr. Sarah Chen allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. Patience, her grandmother had always said, was humanity's greatest virtue. Today, the galaxy was about to learn just how right she had been. Captain Marcus Sullivan had dreamed of this moment his entire life, standing on the bridge of the UES Pioneer's Dream, watching the first human fleet spread out across space like seeds on the wind. He felt the weight of 3 millennia pressing down on his shoulders. Behind them, Earth shrank to a pale blue dot. Ahead lay the infinite darkness of space, punctuated by the distant fires of alien suns. Jump calculations complete, Captain, reported Lieutenant Commander Yuki Nakamura from the navigation station. 17 ships ready for simultaneous fold space insertion. Marcus nodded, his hands steady on the command rail despite the magnitude of what they were about to do. The first human expedition beyond the solar system. The first contact with alien civilizations as equals rather than prisoners. The first step toward claiming humanity's place among the stars. All ships report ready, sir. Communications Officer David Park announced from his station. The Wanderer, New Horizons, and Starbound are standing by for your order. Through the viewing screen, Marcus could see the other vessels of the fleet. They were beautiful in their deadly simplicity, sleek teardrops of metal and ceramic that incorporated 3,000 years of hidden research. Each ship carried a crew of 50 and enough firepower to level a continent, though Marcus hoped they wouldn't need to use it. Signal the fleet, he commanded. Begin Phase 1 of Operation Exodus. The ships around the Pioneer's Dream began to vanish, winking out of existence as they folded space around themselves and leaped across impossible distances. In seconds, they had spread across a dozen star systems, carrying humanity's message to civilizations that had never imagined their prisoners could escape. Fold drive charging, Nakamura reported. Destination Kithari Prime. Estimated travel time 17 minutes. Marcus settled into his command chair, his mind racing through the briefings he had memorized during the flight from Earth. The Kithari Collective was one of the oldest members of the Galactic Council, a species of 6-armed arthropods who had ruled a quarter of the galaxy for over 10,000 years. They were also the primary architects of humanity's containment, the ones who had argued most strongly for keeping Earth isolated. Today, they would be the first to learn that the galaxy had changed. Initiating fold in 3, 2, 1. Mark's space twisted around the Pioneer's dream like a kaleidoscope made of stars.
For 17 minutes that felt like 17 lifetimes, the ship rode the currents of folded spacetime, carried along by technologies that made the galaxy's fastest ships look like rowboats. When reality reasserted itself, they were in orbit around Cathari Prime.
Scanning, announced Science Officer Dr. Elizabeth Walsh from her station. Planet population approximately 47 billion. Massive orbital infrastructure.
I'm reading... Jesus Christ. Report, Doctor, Marcus said calmly.
Sir, there are over 3,000 warships in orbit around this planet. Battleships, carriers, siege platforms. It's the largest military concentration I've ever seen. Marcus nodded grimly.
Intelligence had predicted this. Word of humanity's escape would have spread quickly through the galactic communication networks. The major powers would be mobilizing everything they had, preparing for what they assumed would be a war of expansion and conquest. They were half right.
Open a communication channel to the planetary surface, Marcus ordered. All frequencies. I want everyone to hear this. Park's fingers danced over his console. Channel open, sir.
You're broadcasting to the entire Cathari homeworld. Marcus stood, straightening his uniform.
Through the viewing screen, he could see the brown and orange swirls of Cathari Prime's atmosphere. Somewhere down there, billions of alien beings were probably preparing for humanity's first act of interstellar aggression.
Citizens of Cathari Prime, he began, his voice carrying across space to the alien world below. I am Captain Marcus Sullivan, of the United Earth ship, Pioneer's Dream. I come not as a conqueror, but as an ambassador. Humanity wishes to establish peaceful relations with the Cathari Collective and all peoples of the galaxy. The response was immediate. Every warship in the system began moving toward the Pioneer's Dream, weapons charging with enough energy to sterilize continents. Warning broadcasts filled the communication channels in a dozen different languages, all delivering the same message: surrender or be destroyed. Marcus waited patiently as the alien fleet surrounded his single ship. 3,000 vessels against one. By any conventional calculation, it should have been the shortest battle in galactic history. Captain, Walsh said quietly, I'm detecting massive energy buildups across the fleet. They're preparing to open fire. Let them, Marcus replied. Activate the probability shield. Nakamura's hands moved across her console with practiced efficiency.
Around the Pioneer's Dream, the air began to shimmer as reality itself bent to accommodate humanity's most elegant defensive technology. The probability shield didn't block incoming fire or deflect it.
Instead, it simply made it statistically unlikely to connect with the ship. Laser beams would curve away at the last moment due to unexpected gravitational fluctuations. Missiles would experience random system failures that caused them to detonate harmlessly in space. Particle beams would encounter clouds of interstellar dust that appeared from nowhere to absorb their energy. To an outside observer, it would look like the universe itself was protecting the human vessel. The first salvo came like a wave of artificial stars. Thousands of weapons fired simultaneously, filling space with enough destructive energy to crack a moon. The light was blinding, the heat signature visible from the outer planets of the system. When the light faded, the Pioneer's Dream hung motionless and undamaged in the void. Impossible, Park reported, monitoring the alien communications channels. They're saying it's impossible. Their targeting computers confirmed direct hits, but we're still here. Marcus smiled grimly. Began transmission of the first gift. Deep in the ship's computer banks, terabytes of carefully prepared data began flowing toward Cathari Prime. Mathematical theorems that would revolutionize their understanding of physics. Medical techniques that could extend lifespans by centuries. Agricultural innovations that could feed entire worlds with minimal resources. Technologies that the Galactic Council had deliberately suppressed to maintain control over member species. But most importantly, the transmission contained detailed schematics for faster-than-light communication systems that couldn't be monitored or controlled by government authorities. Captain, Walsh announced, her voice tight with excitement, I'm reading massive power fluctuations across the Cathari fleet. Their ships they're standing down. Weapons powering down system-wide. On the main screen, the brown swirls of Cathari Prime began to change. New lights appeared on the planet's surface as the population received humanity's gift. Within minutes, previously isolated communities were talking to each other across continents. Dissidents who had been silenced by government censorship found their voices. Scientists who had been working in isolation began collaborating on projects the ruling class had deemed too dangerous. It was a revolution transmitted at the speed of light. We're receiving a communication request from the planetary surface, Park reported. It's from the Cathari Council of Speakers. They want to negotiate. Patch them through, Marcus said. The main screen shifted to show the interior of what appeared to be a massive auditorium.
Thousands of six-armed Cathari filled the space, their chitinous shells gleaming under artificial lights. At the center of the assembly, an elderly Cathari, with silver markings on her carapace, stood at a speaker's podium.
I am First Speaker Yaktel of the Cathari Collective, she said in accented but clear standard. Captain Sullivan, we have received your gifts. Our scientists are studying them now. If they prove genuine, they are, Marcus interrupted gently, and there are more where those came from. Humanity has spent 3,000 years learning from the galaxy's best teachers. We've improved on technologies that your own people developed millennia ago. We want to share that knowledge freely. The alien leader's primary eyes widened. Why? What do you want to return? Nothing, Marcus said simply. We want nothing from you except the chance to coexist peacefully. We've seen what happens when knowledge is hoarded by ruling elites. We've watched the Galactic Council maintain control by keeping member species dependent on technologies they're not allowed to understand. That ends now. First Speaker Yaktel was silent for a long moment, her forearms moving in complex patterns that Marcus recognized as deep thought. Around her, the assembled Cathari waited with visible tension. The Council will never allow this, she said finally. The technologies you've shared will destabilize their entire power structure. They will come for you with everything they have. Let them come, Marcus replied. We've been preparing for this moment for 3,000 years. But more importantly, First Speaker, we won't be facing them alone, will we? Understanding dawned in the alien's eyes. The communication technologies humanity had shared would spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Every oppressed species, every silenced dissident, every scientist denied access to basic research tools, would suddenly have the means to organize and resist. The Council's carefully maintained monopoly on information would crumble overnight. You're starting a galactic civil war, Yaktel said, but there was no accusation in her voice. Only wonder. We're ending one, Marcus corrected. The war between rulers and ruled, between those who control knowledge and those who are denied it. The passage from the push, the Council has had its turn at shaping galactic civilization. Now it's time for everyone else to have a voice. Across the Cathari homeworld, the lights were spreading faster now. Communication networks that had taken the ruling class centuries to build were being replicated by ordinary citizens in a matter of hours. The technology was elegant in its simplicity, designed to be easily manufactured with basic industrial equipment. Captain, Walsh called out urgently, I'm detecting massive gravitational distortions at the edge of the system. Something big is coming. Marcus turned to the tactical display, his blood running cold at what he saw. The signature was unmistakable. A Council enforcement dreadnought, one of the massive superweapons used to maintain order across the galaxy. The ship was easily 100 times the size of the Pioneer's Dream, bristling with weapons that could sterilize entire star systems. Red alert, Marcus commanded. All hands to battle stations. The dreadnought materialized from fold space like a mountain made of metal and fury. Its hull was black as the void between stars, marked with the golden spiral that represented the Council's authority. As it entered the system, every smaller vessel fled before it like minnows before a shark. This is Enforcement Commander Thekvar of the Council Dreadnought Final Authority. A new voice announced over the communication channels. Human vessel, you will surrender immediately or be destroyed. This is your only warning. Marcus looked around his bridge, seeing his crew's faces reflected in the tactical displays. These were humanity's finest. Volunteers who had trained their entire lives for this moment. They had families back on Earth, lovers and children and parents who were counting on them to come home. But they also had a responsibility to the 47 billion Cathari below, and to the trillions of other beings across the galaxy who deserved better than the Council's iron-fisted rule. Dr. Walsh, he said quietly, what's our probability of survival against a Council enforcement dreadnought? The science officer consulted her instruments, her face pale. With conventional tactics? 0%, sir. That thing has enough firepower to destroy a dozen ships like ours. Marcus nodded slowly. And with unconventional tactics? Sir, if we could somehow get close enough to activate the probability engine at point-blank range. She shook her head.
It would require sacrificing the ship.
And even then, there's no guarantee it would work on something that size. There's another option. Nakamura said quietly from the navigation station.
The full drive is still charged from our jump here. We could retreat, regroup with the rest of the fleet. Marcus considered this for a moment. It was the sensible choice, the tactically sound decision. Live to fight another day. But as he looked at the tactical display showing the massive dreadnought bearing down on them, he realized that running would send exactly the wrong message to the galaxy. Humanity's credibility depended on showing that they could stand up to the Council's most powerful weapons. If they fled now, every species in the galaxy would assume that humanity's apparent technological superiority was just an illusion. Negative, he said firmly. We stay and fight. Signal the Cathari that we're prepared to defend their right to communicate freely.
Dr. Walsh, prepare to transmit the next gift package to every ship in this system, including the Dreadnought. Sir, Park said urgently, the final authority is charging weapons, massive energy signature. They're preparing to fire.
Marcus gripped his command chair as space around them began to fill with deadly light. But instead of fear, he felt only a profound sense of purpose. 3,000 years ago, humanity had been caged like animals. Today, they would prove that the cage had only made them stronger. All hands, he announced over the ship's internal communication system. Prepare for what may be our finest hour. Today, we show the galaxy what humanity can do when we stop waiting and start fighting for what's right. The Council Dreadnought opened fire, and the battle for the galaxy's soul began in earnest.
The Council Dreadnought Final Authority unleashed the fury of a dying star. Beams of coherent plasma capable of boiling oceans struck the space where the Pioneer's dream had been floating moments before, but the human ship was no longer there.
At the last possible second, it had shifted 3 meters to port, just enough to let the devastation pass harmlessly by. Impossible. Enforcement Commander Thekfar growled from his command throne deep within the Dreadnought's armored core. His species, the Vorthak, had evolved from apex predators, and their instincts screamed that something was fundamentally wrong with this engagement. No ship that small should be able to avoid targeting locks from our primary weapons array. Sir, his tactical officer reported, her voice tight with confusion. Our computers confirm direct hits, but sensor readings show the human vessel undamaged. It's as if our weapons are passing through them. Thekfar's ridge of bone spurs flexed with agitation. He had commanded enforcement dreadnoughts for over 2 centuries, had put down rebellions across 100 worlds. Never had he encountered anything like this. Intensify fire. Full spread pattern. I want that space saturated with enough energy to vaporize an asteroid. The final authority complied with devastating efficiency. Every weapon system on its massive hull opened fire simultaneously, creating a sphere of destruction that should have obliterated anything within 1,000 kilometers. The light was so intense that it temporarily blinded the optical sensors of every ship in the system. When the glare faded, the Pioneer's dream hung motionless in the exact center of the devastation, completely untouched. Aboard the human vessel, Captain Marcus Sullivan watched his crew work with practiced efficiency. The probability shield was holding perfectly, bending the laws of physics just enough to keep them alive, without creating obvious impossibilities. To outside observers, it would look like incredible luck rather than advanced technology. Dr. Walsh, Marcus said calmly, what's the status on our gift transmission? The science officer consulted her instruments with the focused intensity of someone trying to save the universe. Package 2 is uploading to every ship in the system, including the Dreadnought. Estimated completion time 4 minutes. Package 2 contains something even more dangerous than advanced communications technology. It held the complete theoretical framework for probability manipulation, along with simplified instructions for building basic reality anchors. Any species with industrial-level manufacturing capability could reproduce the technology within months. The galaxy would never be the same. Captain, Park announced from communications, we're receiving multiple incoming transmissions. 17 different species are requesting copies of our technical data. The Cathari civilian population is asking if they can help somehow. And he paused, his face pale. Sir, we're getting a priority message from Earth. It's Dr. Chen. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Sarah Chen wouldn't have broken communication silence unless something was very wrong back home. Put her through, he ordered. The main screen shifted to show the familiar face of humanity's chief strategist, but her usual calm expression was replaced by barely controlled urgency. Marcus, thank God, she said without preamble. We've got a problem. Long-range sensors are detecting massive fleet movements throughout Council space. They're not just sending enforcement dreadnoughts to deal with you. They're mobilizing everything. Marcus felt his stomach drop. How many ships? Over 50,000 by our best count.
Every species in the galaxy that owes allegiance to the Council is contributing vessels. It's the largest military force in recorded history. They're calling it the final cleansing. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of the ship's systems and the distant rumble of the dreadnought's continuing bombardment. 50,000 ships. Even with humanity's technological advantages, those were impossible odds. ETA? Marcus asked, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what he was hearing. 48 hours to Earth, 72 hours to your position. Marcus, they're not planning to capture human vessels or negotiate surrender. The intelligence intercepts are clear. They intend to sterilize every world that has received our transmissions. Dr. Walsh looked up from her station, her face grim. Captain, if they're serious about that, we're talking about genocide on a scale the galaxy has never seen. Hundreds of species, trillions of lives. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders like a lead blanket. Humanity had started this revolution to free the galaxy from tyranny, but they had also painted a target on every world that dared to accept human gifts. The Council was apparently willing to burn down half the galaxy rather than lose control. Dr. Chen, he said finally. What are our options? The woman on the screen took a deep breath before answering. We have 17 hours until our fleets can rendezvous at the predetermined coordinates. If we're going to stop this armada, we'll need to act before it reaches Earth or any of the worlds that have accepted our technology. Can we win? Marcus asked bluntly. In a conventional engagement? No. Even with our probability shields and full drives, we're outnumbered 3,000 to 1. But we're not planning a conventional engagement. Dr. Chen's expression shifted, becoming something that would have terrified Marcus if he hadn't known her for 20 years. We're going to show the galaxy what humans do when someone threatens our family. The transmission cut off, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Around them, the dreadnought continued its futile bombardment, apparently convinced that enough firepower would eventually overcome whatever protection the human ship possessed. Captain, Nakamura called out from navigation. I'm detecting fold signatures throughout the system. Multiple ships incoming. Marcus turned to the tactical display, hope flaring in his chest. But instead of the sleek profiles of human vessels, he saw a collection of ships from dozens different species. Kethari cruisers flew alongside Thalorian frigates. Ancient Heckmar generation ships moved in formation with cutting-edge Zephyrian scouts. Sir, Park announced, his voice filled with wonder. We're receiving a transmission from the lead vessel. It's from First Speaker Yaktel. The main screen shifted to show the interior of a Kethari warship. The six-armed leader stood at what appeared to be a command station, surrounded by beings from species Marcus didn't recognize. Her four eyes blazed with determination as she spoke. Captain Sullivan, the Kethari Collective has voted. We stand with humanity against Council tyranny. We are joined by representatives from 43 other species who have received your gifts and chosen freedom over submission. Marcus felt a surge of emotion that threatened to overwhelm him.
A Tyanary dog came down somewhere.
First Speaker, you don't understand the magnitude of what you're facing. The Council is sending 50,000 ships to end this rebellion. Your worlds will be destroyed if you help us. Our worlds will be destroyed anyway if we submit, Yaktel replied firmly. The technologies you've shared have shown us the truth about Council rule. They have been deliberately keeping us weak, preventing us from developing solutions to problems they created. This ends now. Sir, Dr. Walsh called out urgently. The final authority has stopped firing. They're receiving new orders. On the tactical display, the massive dreadnought was indeed powering down its weapons systems. But instead of retreating, it was moving closer to the growing fleet of rebel vessels. All ships, Commander Thekvar's voice echoed across the communication channels. This is the final authority. By order of the Galactic Council, you will disperse immediately and return to your home systems. Any vessel that does not comply will be considered in violation of the Preservation Accords and subject to immediate termination. First Speaker Yaktel's response was immediate and unambiguous. Enforcement Commander Thekvar, the Kethari Collective formally withdraws from the Galactic Council and renounces all treaties signed under duress. We claim our right to self-determination and alliance with whomever we choose. Similar declarations began flooding the communication channels as species after species announced their independence from Council rule. The revolution humanity had sparked was spreading faster than anyone had anticipated. Marcus watched the tactical display with growing amazement as more ships continued to arrive. The rebel fleet was now over 300 vessels strong and growing by the hour. It was still vastly outnumbered by the Council's approaching armada, but it represented something that hadn't existed in the galaxy for thousands of years, a united opposition to tyranny.
Captain, Park said quietly. Dr. Chen is requesting another private communication.
Marcus nodded, and the main screen shifted back to show Earth's chief strategist. But this time, she was standing in what appeared to be a massive underground facility filled with equipment that hurt to look at directly.
Marcus, are you seeing the fleet buildup around your position?
Yes, Doctor. We have over 300 rebel vessels and more arriving every hour.
Good.
That's good, but it's not going to be enough. Dr. Chen's expression grew somber. The Council Armada has begun its advance. They're using some kind of enhanced fold drives that put them ahead of schedule. We now have less than 24 hours before they reach you. Marcus felt his heart sink.
What are you recommending? Full deployment of the Pandora Protocol. The bridge went dead silent. Every human officer knew about Pandora, though most had hoped it would never be necessary.
It was humanity's ultimate contingency plan, developed during the darkest years of containment when it seemed the Council might decide to simply erase Earth from existence.
Dr. Chen, Marcus said carefully, Pandora is designed for defense of Earth. If we deploy it here, we'll have shown every species in the galaxy exactly what humanity is capable of when pushed to our limits. She finished. The psychological impact will be enormous. Either the Council will surrender immediately, or they'll escalate to extinction-level warfare.
There's no middle ground.
Dr. Prosk.
Walsh looked up from her station, her face pale. Captain, if we're talking about Pandora, shouldn't the crew know what they're potentially facing? Marcus considered this for a moment.
The bridge crew had volunteered for this mission knowing the risks, but Pandora changed everything. If they proceeded with the protocol, there would be no going back. The galaxy would see humanity as either liberators or as the greatest threat to galactic peace in recorded history.
All hands, this is the captain, he announced over the ship's communication system. In 18 hours, we will likely face the largest military force in galactic history. Command has authorized the deployment of contingency protocols that will fundamentally alter the balance of power in this galaxy. Any crew member who wishes to transfer to one of the Allied vessels may do so. No questions asked, no judgment rendered. He paused, looking around the bridge at the faces of people who had become his family over the years of preparation.
However, if you choose to stay, you will be part of the most important battle in human history. Not just for our freedom, but for the freedom of every species that has ever chafed under Council rule.
Today, we have the chance to end 3,000 years of galactic tyranny. The response was immediate and unanimous. Not a single crew member requested transfer.
Very well, Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion.
Dr. Walsh, begin preparation for Pandora deployment. Dr. Chen, we'll see you in 18 hours. As the Pioneer's dream began to glow with energies that had never before been unleashed in galactic space, the Allied fleet around it took on a defensive formation. 300 ships from across the galaxy, united by a common dream of freedom. It wasn't nearly enough to stop 50,000 Council vessels, but it was enough to make a statement that would echo across the cosmos for generations to come. In the depths of space, probability itself began to bend as humanity prepared to show the galaxy what 3,000 years of patient preparation could accomplish. The Council had kept them caged, thinking containment was control. They were about to learn the difference between a prisoner and a predator that had simply been waiting for the right moment to strike. The final battle for the galaxy's soul was about to begin, and humanity was done waiting. The day humanity stopped waiting, and the galaxy fled. HFY.